Podcasting and social media, how can they play together? Whether you're a podcast host, podcast guest, or both, this episode will help you use social media in a way that amplifies your podcast strategy. Let's do this. Hey there, pitches. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Go Pitch Yourself. I am your host, Angie Trueblood. And in this episode, we're digging into how we can use social media in a way that feels positive and also has impact on our podcasting strategy. If you are new here, welcome. I am a podcast visibility strategist, aka podcast pitcher extraordinaire, the founder of the Podwize group, and fun fact, I bought myself a power washer for Mother's Day. I know it sounds super lame, but I was very excited about it. And then I promptly exacerbated my old lady back issues as a result of using it. But hello, the satisfaction of power washing 3 chairs and our patio was worth it, I think. It was very satisfying. I do have to say that. If you're an OG listener, hello. Thank you for sticking with me. I am so pumped to welcome this week's guest, Andréa Jones, on the show. She is going to be spilling the beans on social media strategies that complement podcasting. And it's a fairly platform agnostic conversation. So if you have one social media platform that you love over another, I think you'll still get a lot of meaning and value out of this episode. So we cover all of the major ones, and a lot of what we talk about is the general strategy and how we should approach social media. So I think you'll love it. Per usual, before we get into that conversation, it is time for our podcast love of the week. Now, this podcast love of the week is actually one whose presence in my life really highlights how podcasts are able to bring people together, specifically my family. It is not a show that I've guested on. That would be years in the making, hundreds of years in the making, probably. But instead, it is one that my 11-year-old and I listen to together. It's American History Tellers by Wondery. My best friend told me about it, and she said her son, who is best friends with my son, loves it. So Henry and I gave it a go on the way to school one day. And now it's our go-to podcast in the car. And I've even caught him listening to it in his room on Alexa. They cover topics on civil rights, the California Gold Rush, presidential assassinations, and it has sparked a lot of questions, some that I do not know the answers to. I hated history in high school. Some really interesting conversations and a deeper understanding of American history for both of us. So basically everything that I love about podcasts. Give it a listen. They organize it by seasons, and there's a topic per season, but I think you'll love it. So go enjoy. All right, friends, it is time to dig in with Andréa Jones, the owner of a social media marketing agency and the founder of the Savvy Social School and the Thrive membership program. I hope you love this conversation as much as I loved being a part of it. All right, Andréa, welcome to the Go Pitch Yourself podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we were talking before we hit record. I feel like we've been in each other's circle for years now. So it's good to have a chance to finally have a conversation.
Yes, orbiting around the internet.
Yes. All right, before we dig in, we're talking social media, so everyone brace yourself. People either love it or hate it. So we'll see how this goes over, but we're going to make it really approachable. Share with our listeners a little bit about what it is you do and who you serve, and then we'll dig in.
Yeah, so I am all about social media, but as an introvert, I feel like I've hacked it to work for me. So a lot of what I do for my clients and for my students in my membership is to create a social media strategy that works for your personality and also helps build your business. We're not typically out here just posting our meals for the funsies of it. You know, we actually do want to have social media as a marketing tool to grow our business. So that's what I do.
I love it. And what platforms you would describe yourself as an agency owner on the client side, right?
Yes, yes. And most of our revenue does come from our clients. So that's where I spend most of my time.
Okay.
And we're on all of the major platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and the past 2 years, TikTok as well.
Okay. Wow. That's impressive. How big is your team? Just out of curiosity.
So we have 15 people on the team. About half of them are employees and half are contractors.
Okay.
So it's been a lot of learning, like how to manage people, which is a new fun skill set.
It is, especially as a new mother, because now you get to manage all the people.
Yes. And honestly, building the team came out the right time because now I'm able to spend much less time working because my team is like my magic weapon behind the scenes.
Yeah, I love that. Having a small team on our client side has been one of the best things that has allowed us to kind of ebb and flow, myself in the business, but also teammates in the business, because we know we have each other's back. So I hear you on that. I think before we get into the tactical pieces and the strategic pieces of different platforms, share a little bit about what impact you are working with clients on for them to gain from social media. Are they using it as a way to nurture an existing audience, to attract a new audience? Like, really, where should we be plugging social media into our marketing strategy? What role should it be playing?
Yeah. And I think this is a really great place to start because oftentimes as business owners, we kind of just jump in with both feet and then we don't really think about like the role that social media plays in our business. So ultimately, social media is social first, media second. So the social piece is connecting with your ideal clients and customers. So having them discover who you are and then having them get to know you through content marketing. So that can be video, that could be well-written posts, whatever your medium of choice is. Ultimately, social media is social at its core. And then you use the media as the tool to connect with those people. And then it depends on the kind of business you are. Most of my clients are coaches, consultants, thought leaders, or online educators, and they often use social media as that relationship tool. But we also have clients who are direct to consumer products, or we have one client who is a local restaurant. That social media strategy does tend to be a little more conversion focused. So selling directly to the people who are following you. So depending on the type of business you have as well, could determine kind of what direction your social media strategy goes in.
Yeah, I love that. Something came up in me as you were saying that. I have a friend of mine, and she said, I don't know if it was her business coach or I think it was maybe someone on her team told her, you're really good at the media part of social media, but you're not so good at the social part. And I think a lot of what prevents business owners from really stepping into social media and creating an effective strategy around it is likely a misperception that you need to be on these platforms all day, every day, interacting, networking, posting. So how do you navigate that with clients? I'm sure some of it you probably do for them, but if they aren't outsourcing the social networking part, how can we contain that, right, as business owners? Because we have lots of other things going on.
Yeah. And I do want to mention outsourcing as a great option, even if it's like aspirational. One day I will get there. That's how I felt about my bookkeeping for the longest time.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm doing this, but I know somebody else has got to do this one day. It's not for me.
Right.
And it's okay if social media is like that for you too. Some people love it. Some people hate it. So if you're the one doing it, just focusing on one platform as your primary platform is the best way to go. And then instead of giving yourself a number of posts that you have to share every week, I would give yourself time limits. And we've studied this with our clients and with our students because a time-based constraint is actually a lot easier for us to commit to week over week over week, rather than trying to put out 5 posts every week. Because we've all been on that week at that week where we're like, I have nothing to say right now.
I am so done.
And what happens is when we get in that spot is we end up not posting for a lot longer than we intend to, because then we feel like it's this massive hurdle to get over because, oh, it's been a week since I've posted. Now it's 2 weeks since I've posted and now it's 3 weeks. And now I feel like I have to make an announcement like, hey, haven't
I'm
posted.
back.
Yeah. So to get past that, we coach a lot of our clients who are doing it for themselves or our students in our membership to give yourself that time limit. Some weeks you may only have one post or you may only work on half a post. And then the next week you may have 3 posts, right? So kind of figuring out what you can do within that time limit is a lot easier to maintain over time and focusing in on one platform.
I love that. Is there a certain amount of time that we should spend interacting? And this might get platform specific, most likely. In my mind, I'm picturing Instagram and LinkedIn. But is there a certain amount of time that we should be spending interacting on other people's content compared to posting? Because I know we hear all of that, like, don't just put up your, post and interact with people on there and leave. But that other part of it takes a lot of time.
Yeah. Yes. So I typically recommend 1 to 3 hours a week for content creation. So 1 to 3 hours a week for like writing the post, designing a graphic to go with it, or recording video. And then 15 to 20 minutes a day engaging. So that means responding to comments on your own content and then actually going out on other folks' content pieces and building your network. It's networking just virtually, which again, I, as an introvert, I love because I can turn it off, do it, and then turn it off and like forget about it.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. I made the switch over to LinkedIn from Instagram sometime in 2022. And I love it. I would much rather I love meeting with people locally ish. I have a small group of people that I love to meet with locally. But if I want to have a networking call with someone, I would much rather do it virtually. And I feel like that's what LinkedIn has offered me, is the chance to sort of extend my network without having to leave the house, which sounds awful. But we all have other things going on in our lives, that we're mothers, we're wives, daughters. So I love that we can do it now on some of these different platforms and use that as a business tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then you're not also having the travel time too, that you have to like take time away. So I love it too as well.
Okay. So let's talk trends that you're seeing in the world of LinkedIn and Instagram. I feel like, though, we would be remiss in not including TikTok. And you do YouTube as well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the good news is there are some like overarching trends that are happening across all the platforms right now. Even like Facebook and Twitter, we're seeing these trends. My team and I have actually struggled to name this one, but internally we call it the Kim Kardashian effect.
Oh, no.
Where we're past the age of like a perfectly polished Instagram feed or LinkedIn presence or, TikTok video, but we don't want it to be so messy that it looks like you didn't plan it out. So this in between, like, I woke up like this, but really you're wearing makeup and really you have Botox and fillers, but it's natural, right? Yeah. So it's that effect right now on social media, the unpolished, polished. I don't know. We don't have a name for it, but
yeah, it's like I don't care, but I do care. Like,
yes,
it's the balance. Yeah, I totally get that.
The no makeup look of social media, where, we want to see you on social media as a business owner. We want to put a face to the business. We want to see personal brands. We don't want them to be unattainable. We don't want them to be so polished with the studio lights and the perfect words. We want to hear you stumble. We want to hear your thoughts. So this is a trend that's across all the platforms right now, which is great news for business owners, because you can take your phone in your car in between soccer practice and share a little tidbit, a little nugget of information. And no matter what platform you're on, it's working really well right now. So even if you're on LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, all of those kind of casual yet impactful style content pieces are what's working really well. And if you're not a video person, this can also work for written text, writing it in your notes app on your phone and taking a screenshot of that. And that's your image. That's what's trending right now.
Okay. So I prefer, obviously, audio. I love the podcast. And we've actually shifted. We used to do a lot of sharing on Instagram of client episodes that go live as a way to kind of connect with the host and to share, the wins that our people are having. We've shifted that, and we should probably reconsider it, but we've shifted it to where we include that in our newsletter. So the hosts who have our clients on, we always give a shout out in our newsletter. And where I used to share a lot of my episodes and stories, I actually include a whole segment in the podcast of podcasts we love. And then it's almost like a podcast promo for the shows that I have been on, because that's just the platform where I connect with more people and it feels natural to me. But I also love to write. And I think that's why LinkedIn has been appealing. But I really like the way the Notes app can help get the attention in a different way than a long text post.
Yes, absolutely. So you're leaning into your preference, which is important when it comes to marketing, because if I say to you, Angie, you have to be on LinkedIn, and then you log in and you go, I don't like it here. Like, it doesn't matter how much I think it's the best tool for you. If you're not liking it, you're never going to use it anyway. So I love that you understand how you like to communicate, and then you can use that tool to create content more effectively, create content faster, and create content like you actually enjoy creating it.
Yeah. So are you seeing people, well, I would say on the client side of your work, you're planning out the content, right? So even though it is like planned, but doesn't look spur of the moment, but I get this like nuance of what you're saying. So it's not heavily produced, but it is planned and curated appropriately, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And our graphic designer right now is actually joking because she doesn't quite like the trend. Like, she likes the overly designed graphics and the mock-ups of, what their PDF freebie looks like or whatever the case is. And people aren't resonating with that right now. So just like a white background, black text, a nice hook at the beginning, and you can have, an Instagram carousel post, or even these are working on LinkedIn right now too. Yeah. These carousel posts that are just text based. People love them. And I think it also makes it a lot easier to share from a user perspective. So keep it simple and keep it impactful. And that's what's really working right now.
Okay. I love that. Where are we on Reels? Because I know for a while that was like a super hot thing, and it like sucked the life out of me trying to do them.
Instagram is having a little bit of a midlife crisis right now. I feel like they're like in the mode of like, I'm going to buy a Ferrari just because. Like, I want to be like TikTok and create Reels. It's a moment. Reels content does work really well because of the TikTok phenomenon of everybody wanting to consume this type of content. My clients do struggle though with Reels because there's a lot of trend-based content that you kind of have to move quickly to participate. And then it's a lot of video. So we do a combination approach of trending content, which we just add trending sounds to the background of any video. Mm-hmm. We do some face to camera videos where we can clip them out from podcasts that they're guesting on or other resources. And then we actually use Canva to create reels where you can add moving backgrounds like, a waterfall, and then the same thing, the text on the screen. And that's how we've been using reels. And one of our clients consistently gets 10, 12,000 views on her reels just by turning a post we would have used as a static post anyways into a reel. And that works really well too.
So by adding the music and then the movement on the Canva image?
Yes. Okay. So the music is key because that's how you're like speaking the Instagram language. Yeah. And then using the movement in the background helps add dynamic elements to the video. So it helps our human brains kind of pay attention to it. And then you have the words that you were going to say anyways on the screen as well.
So crazy. I'm so glad that y'all are doing it for clients because we worked with a team for a little bit in 2022. And it was so nice to have someone walk me through and help create a system of you just record this, get it to us, and we will do the rest. It's kind of like you and the bookkeeper, like know your strengths. I knew this was not something, it would take me hours to create a reel. And so I think it's a matter too of like knowing what to outsource that will have impact in your business.
Yeah. And if it is taking you hours to create reels, sometimes it's not you because Instagram moved very quickly on this and they're still trying to catch up. And reels is glitchy AF. Like, honestly, I do not like using the in-app editor. I use either a third-party tool like CapCut, or I will record in TikTok and then download and upload to Instagram because Instagram is having a moment, y'all. It's not you, it's Instagram, I promise.
Can I just tell you that CapCut is the new thing for preteens, and like my daughter is creating videos in CapCut, so she rides horses. Pro tip, don't encourage that if you can avoid it. It is not the most cost-effective hobby, but she's in and loves it. And so at practice, I'll sometimes like take videos just so that she can see herself, but she'll take it and then create really cool CapCut videos that she adds music to and text. And it's got my brain going of, I feel like she could do some work for our business, and it must be fairly intuitive, right?
Yeah, it is. They're partnered with TikTok. It almost seems like TikTok created it themselves, but they're not saying that because a lot of the tools are so similar to the in-app editor. But it's very like TikTok is very Gen Z, in that it's created for that generation. They love using it. It's very intuitive for them. And honestly, I found it easy to use as well. It took me a little longer than I would have liked, but it was very easy to use, much easier than using even like an iMovie, or definitely easier than an Adobe. Yeah. And it feels like Canva to Photoshop to me. Like it really like makes it accessible for a lot more people.
Yeah. I like it. And I like that she's getting the opportunity to play around and create. She has asked, she's like, can I start a YouTube channel? I'm like, no, we are not. Oh. I know. And because I just don't want her to get in the habit of posting things and judging whether they're good or bad based on likes. So I need to figure a different alternative. That's why I was wondering, well, what if I paid her or did something to where if she created content for us, then she could do it if she loves it, but it's not for validation.
Yes. Oh, that could be fun.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
We'll see. Okay, cool. So I would love to dig in a little bit about, you have a podcast and you have worked with a number of podcasters. You've guested on shows. A big question that kind of comes up is how do we make that leap from having an audio show or audio visibility opportunities? How do we make that leap to social media to help increase the impact and also do our due diligence, right, in sharing when we are a guest on someone else's show? So can you give us all the things, Andrea, on podcasting and social media?
Yeah. So I think it actually starts with the interview itself. So many hosts ask you at the end of the episode what you would like to do with the audience. And a lot of times we are talking about our free offers, or we do, direct folks to our website. But I think that's also a good place potentially for a social media call out, or have it embedded in the episode. So for instance, sometimes when I'm on episodes and I say something and maybe the host and I disagree about it, I'll say, you know what, if you're listening to this, send me a DM on Instagram and tell me what you think. Yeah. I'm at Online Dre on Instagram or something like that. So that helps like embed those call to actions within the episode, send me a DM. So that's great to kind of capture some of that audience. And then after the episode, you definitely do want to share it out. It's another way to connect with your audience. They get to hear your story. They get to hear a different perspective. Every single podcast is different. Even if you're sharing similar tips or stories, every time you do it, it's different. So share it out with your audience. And then make sure to go back to that host or that show's page and look at the comments. Oftentimes people will listen to the episode and then go back on social media and share their thoughts, but they may not tag you specifically. They may tag the host, or they may just comment on that podcast's page. So go back to that page a couple of days after the episode has dropped and respond to the comments of people saying, great episode, or I had this takeaway. Participating with that community is such a big opportunity as a guest on someone else's podcast.
I think that's really important for hosts to hear also, because A guest can only know to go back and engage on your post when they know that you are sharing it and if they know that it is going live. So we have our executive assistant once a week. She basically scrubs Apple to see if any of our clients' interviews have gone live, because there are a good amount of interviews that we never get notified that the interview is live, which makes it hard to get that interaction on social, which actually starts to amplify the post and get more eyes on it. So podcast hosts definitely let guests know when the interview is going live. And it made me think, I don't always let our guests know like when I'm going to share it on social. We always tag them so it notifies them, but that's definitely something to consider so that they can take that moment and go back and engage. It's sometimes hard to measure the impact that a podcast interview has on your business, especially in that first, week or two after it goes live. But a way to increase its impact is engaging on that post and with those people. So I love that. I also love what you said about not just sharing, hey, I'm over on Instagram at Online Drea. It's Online Drea, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Not just saying that's where I am, but giving an action request around that. We've seen that some at the ends, just saying, hey, I'm on LinkedIn at Angie Trueblood. Connect with me, send me a note about which part of this interview was most impactful or eye-opening for you. It's got to be something quick. And even that I feel like is too much of an ask. But it's all about using the podcast as a way to kind of pull people out from the woodworks to start engaging.
Yeah. And it's definitely an ongoing thing. Like we were talking before the show about our mutual friend, Shannon Siriano. Y'all go check her out on LinkedIn because she is a dynamic person. And we did an episode recently on our podcast, and not only did she share it out, but later that week, she started a conversation on LinkedIn saying, I had this conversation with Andréa on her podcast, and then asked some follow-up questions. And so both of us were getting tagged in that conversation on LinkedIn. And it really brought more life back to that conversation, that episode. I felt great as a host being, drawn into this conversation. And so there's lots of ways to really be dynamic with your placements as a guest and continue the momentum from the podcast placements that you've gotten.
Well, and it goes into that repurposing of content. We did that on an episode. I think it was it was an episode I think that I did with Heather Osgood on podcast advertising. And it's a great way if you're handling your own social media and you only need to post twice a week or a certain number of hours, you can use, I want to get your opinion, first of all, on audiograms in 1 second. So let's put a pin in that because I don't think they're as ideal as we probably once thought they were. But when you had said share the interview or share your own podcast episode, I'd love to hear best practices for how. But I think what you mentioned about Shannon circling back and creating a conversation, that was a word you used a lot. It's the really important piece, pulling content out of a conversation you already had and integrating the other people in your community. So you're pulling people in to this content. It's not just that you're pushing out content, you're drawing people in. But how do you recommend sharing a podcast?
Yeah. What you said about conversation, what you highlighted there is key. I think sometimes people think, oh man, my posts don't get engagement. I'm not getting engagement. That's the biggest thing we hear. But then my question to you is, are you creating engagement worthy content, right? Why would someone stop and leave a comment on your post? If you struggle to answer that, then it's time to think a little bit deeper about your audience and what they want, not what you want. And Shannon does a great job of this on her LinkedIn, where she shares stories that are personal and vulnerable, but she asks questions and invites people into the conversation. I think that's super important when you're on any platform, and then going out and engaging yourself as well. So it is a little bit of a give and take. But when it comes to actually just sharing the podcast episode, I like to think of it a little bit like, movie trailers where we see those. It's got to tease a little bit of what that show is like what's the flavor of it. And you want to leave people wanting more, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm talking about a story, let's say a story I tell oftentimes is I met my husband on YouTube. I tell that story sometimes. So like, if you want to hear the story of how I met my husband on YouTube, you got to listen to this podcast episode. So right now I'm already like teasing out a little bit of what it is.
Yeah.
And then I'm saying you go listen to this podcast episode because I had this conversation, right? So having those stories that you can tease out is very helpful. And then asking a question. So where did you meet your spouse? Mm-hmm. Or do you have a fun, cute meet story that you want to share, like, especially if it's around a holiday like Valentine's Day, right? So, tying it into the thoughts and feelings that people are having on social media is super helpful. And being a human, I think sometimes, again, it goes back to that, like, I want to be perfectly polished, but showing a little bit of the raw, the real can really help open that up a little bit. On audiograms, I do think they can and still work. They're not as impactful as they were, say, 3 years ago. People do tune them out a little bit more now. An audiogram can work really well if it's like super punchy. So it has to be a clip that people want to listen to, and make sure you have the captions turned on, because most people navigate social media without their sound turned on.
Yeah. I have been thinking about that as we've started to put video on LinkedIn. I probably still need to do more me talking and, sharing some of the recordings from the podcast. But I loaded one today, which I'm interested to see how it's shaking out, because I did a Q&A episode. And one of the questions was, how many episodes of the podcast do I need to listen to before I pitch or before I guest? And my answer is actually 0. You don't need to listen to any of them full length. And so that's an example of something that's a little bit punchier that you might want to share that could lead people like, oh, this is a content she's covering on this Q&A episode. I'm going to go listen to it. I also love that you shared the story piece of it, because I think a lot of times when people hear engagement and including your audience in your post, they think a question kind of checks the box. And I don't think that's actually what helps develop the relationship. Like, what Shannon is so good at doing is setting up this really vulnerable post and sharing details of her life appropriately and with boundaries that she feels comfortable with, but sharing and then asking you to come in, because it's like, well, I'll go first. Now it's your turn. And I think that's an important piece that sometimes we miss when we're picturing it as like, I just need to share my episode so people will go listen. Well, no, it's kind of a different game.
Exactly that. And I think I want you to think about, as you're navigating social media, what do you feel drawn to? And I think that can help you create more content. Because if you are readily able to participate in a certain way, then creating content that encourages that may come a little bit easier to you. So it takes a little bit of thought, takes a little bit of practice, but you definitely do need to give a little before you can have such high expectations from your audience.
Yeah, I love that. Let's dig in before we wrap up. And I know this comes too from people who own businesses and are sort of stepping into that CEO role. You and I have kind of alluded to that. It's like, well, what do I share if I want it to be a personal brand, but then I also do not want to be the one that is on social all the time, being the forward-facing part of the business? How do you recommend people establish their boundaries and really like their limits around what they share and how personal it gets?
Yeah, this is such a great question because it is a personal choice. So one of my personal choices, for instance, is I don't really share photos of my kid. I shared one this year, the Christmas shoot, and I'm like, that's enough. We don't need to. I just don't feel comfortable with it personally. But my dog Gibson, who's like sleeping behind me right now, I share him, I think, once a week. He's great. He's
fine with that.
He's fine. He loves the camera. I actually have 2 dogs, and people get surprised because my other dog does not like the camera that much. So for me, I found ways to be personable, show up, share things without sharing my personal life. And so it does take some thought to figure out, okay, this is what I feel comfortable sharing. This is what I don't. This is how I feel comfortable showing up. This is how I don't. And then sticking with that. One of my clients, for instance, doesn't like video. I've been working with her for 3 years. She's just not a video person. Even when she creates a video, she kind of like her shoulders raise up and she looks uncomfortable. So then the video doesn't perform as well because she just doesn't feel comfortable there. And she has some of the highest engagement out of all of our clients because she doesn't feel comfortable on video. So she feels comfortable in her lane, which is actually audio podcasting. Mm-hmm. So when we think about where you're comfortable, leaning into that, getting support in other areas, you can still be the face of your company. She does photo shoots. That works really well for showing herself, her personal brand. You can be a thought leader without having to do photo shoots or video shoots. It's really your expertise that's shining through. So I love setting boundaries. I'm a huge boundaries person. I don't have my notifications turned on social media. None of them. Do not like that. So you can decide. That's the best part. You decide, you make it up, and then stick with those boundaries and enjoy the limitations that you put on yourself to be able to actually maximize your creativity.
I love that. And I love that this conversation has not been super tactical, like go use this app to create this thing and then repost it on these 3 platforms. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to use social media effectively, it needs to be consistent. Whatever pace we decide, we need to be consistent with that, right? I publish my show every other week. I have been consistent doing that for 3 years. That works for me. Same with social. It's figuring out your lane and enjoying it for the time that you are choosing to be engaged on it. This was great. I really appreciate the perspective. And I think I can almost feel the listeners like taking a deep breath to relax and kind of get back to the drawing board and figure out what's the strategy I'm going to use? Where am I going to show up? Where am I going to get support? Because that's always an option too. If you feel like it's a part of your business you want to explore and you want to do more, but you don't have the bandwidth or the interest, then there are people, Andréa and her team, who can help. So I just appreciate that. Where can people connect with you if they would like to check out your services and kind of learn more about what it is that you do for clients?
Yeah. So my website's the best place to start. It's OnlineDrea. That's OnlineDrea.com. We have our services listed there, our programs, all of that goodness. And then if you like podcasts, the Savvy Social podcast, we have, I just recorded episode 241, which is wild to me.
Crazy.
But it's such a great place to start to kind of get a sense of what's actually working now. Not theories, but practical social media strategies, advice, all of the things.
Yeah. And you just had an episode, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, but trends on LinkedIn. I think it was an episode all about LinkedIn. So I am loving that. So
yes. We do all of the platforms as well. So definitely tune in. But LinkedIn, I think I love it. It's a rising star, and I want more people to be on it because it's like the easiest platform in my opinion. That's so for business owners right now. Yeah.
But just you need an episode on proper DM etiquette. That would be my recommendation because
writing it down.
Oh my gosh, it is. I mean, it's probably none of your listeners that are doing the horrible things that we're seeing in the DMs, but I've started to create my own filter to when I get a request. I can tell there's certain things I look for, whether or not I will accept or ignore them based on the probability that I will get pitched in the DMs immediately after.
Oh, yes. I'm going to do this episode because I love this idea. Because I once got DM'd about solar panels from someone in like Missouri. I don't even live in the US, so I don't know how that happened.
It's insane. I'll have to send you one I got last week. We'll talk about that offline.
Okay.
Andréa, it was so great to have you and to finally meet you. Thank you for pouring yourself into our audience.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show.
All right. What do you think? Any key takeaways of something that you're going to plan to do differently on social? Let me know. I may end up stealing it and doing it too. But really, I would love to hear your thoughts on the episode. I am active over on LinkedIn, so definitely connect with me there at Angie Trueblood. Send a connect request. Let me know that you were listening to this episode with Andréa, and we will take it from there. Sound good? All right, friend, until next time, which I believe is going to be our 100th episode, be well and be visible. So much for listening to this episode of Go Pitch Yourself. If you found this episode to be helpful, friend, you would be blown away by what we can accomplish together. Here are 2 next best steps. 1, be sure to sign up for our bi-weekly newsletter. That is twice a month, if that term confuses you as much as it does me. Each week that our episodes drop, I send an action-focused email, including an insider tip of the week based on the work that we do behind the scenes in our clients' business. For example, a recent tip of the week included how to estimate how large a podcast audience is. To get access to this exclusive content, pop on over to thepodwizegroup.com/pitches and sign up. As a special thank you, you'll get your first insider tip of the week as access to 6 pitches my team and I have sent that were accepted, including the core components of any great pitch. Number 2, schedule a call with me to figure out which of our services, if any, would be a good fit for you. We have a variety of ways to support you and your team in helping grow your business through podcast guesting, and I am pretty skilled at helping identify pain points and solutions. Hop over to thepodwizegroup.com/services and grab a spot on my calendar at the bottom of the page.